Howdy folks, and welcome to Watch Dogs Legion with the mighty Jingles, and somebody's been setting off bombs in the city of London, leading to a depressingly predictable response from the government and security services. Yes, it's that old gag again, get the people good and scared and they'll be quite happily prepared to give up a whole bunch of liberty for a little bit of security.
A series of explosions devastated 3 sites in London. Authorities are asking residents to remain in their homes as the situation continues to develop. We have received no official casualty total, but it is expected.
Mourners gathered for a series of candlelight vigils that brought closure to thousands of families and indeed to an entire city. London is now laser-focused.
Today at 10 Downing Street, where Nigel Cass, CEO of private military company Albion, received a mandate to secure London. Cass has vowed to hunt down DedSec. Terrorist responses failed force. Albion used cutting-edge artificial intelligence systems and autonomous drones to capture the remaining members of DedSec. A stark warning to would-be insurgents.
Corporations are posting record profits due to increased efficiencies in production and distribution, enabled by the use of technologies initially developed and approved for security purposes.
Cleanup as crime numbers take a dive. Illegal gambling, drug trafficking and prostitution all down following prosecutions of the leaders of 4 of London's 5 largest criminal syndicates. The streets of Camden and Brixton.
As Albion's mandate is extended indefinitely by the government, life finally begins to return to normal. Curfews and travel restrictions have been lifted in all boroughs, thanks to the deployment.
News outlets, reports of rioting in Trafalgar Square have been greatly exaggerated, possibly by foreign meddlers pushing a false narrative through social media. Albion is in complete control of a few...
To reprimand the public about the circulation of fake news, conspiracy theories persisting in dark corners of the internet that terrorist group DedSec were framed for the bombings have been roundly rejected. Our own reporters could not find a single Londoner willing to expound those theories on camera. The facts.
So that's the initial setup. Somebody's been setting off bombs in London and blaming it on a dissident group that goes by the name of DedSec. DedSec were not responsible, of course, and in fact were trying to stop the bombings, but in the wake of the security clampdown, all of DedSec's members were shot while resisting arrest, with the exception of one. Her name is Sabine. She was DedSec's leader. She's been forced to go into hiding and is now attempting to rebuild DedSec from the ground up by selecting her first operative, and this is where you come in. This is the character selection screen. As you can see, we've got a fairly wide selection. This is just our first character. We will be playing more than one. In fact, a large part of the game is going to be recruiting other operatives for DedSec. So we've got Yana Serko here, who's a football player. Her special ability is physically fit, she takes less damage. We have Bruce Pinto, a game developer, who has the special ability of summoning a drone. A cosmetologist, who's a tough drunk and therefore takes less damage. A medical orderly, and he has a shorter team injury time special ability. We've got a reality TV star here who's been banned for life from London Zoo and has access to an MP5, which is kind of nice. Somebody who failed his motorcycle license test, and his special ability is he has a motorcycle. At first I was thinking to myself, how can any of these abilities possibly be useful? But you'd be surprised. I was expecting this game to be a sort of painfully hipster Ubisoft open world type game. You know, the kind of game that Ubisoft have been trotting out reliably and mechanically for the best part of the last 15 years. And to a large degree it is, but there's so much in Watch Dogs Legion that's different, that sets it apart from the Far Cries and the Ghost Recons of this world. Shorter team arrest time, short hack cooldowns. No, I don't want him. You know, I was severely tempted, where is she? To go with a reality TV star, because I kind of like to have an MP5. But she is such a wanker. I couldn't possibly make myself play this character. She's just such a hateful, hipster poser, I couldn't possibly force myself to play this character. So we're going to go with Arthur Cassidy, the bouncer, instead. Discharged from the armed forces for insubordination. Age 32. Occupation bouncer. DedSec. Helped erase his criminal record. So, okay, Arthur Cassidy it is. Welcome to London in the very near future. Surveillance absolutely everywhere, which is really not that much different from London today. It's already got more cameras per square mile than any other city in the world. It's just a little bit more subtle about it than it appears to be here in Watch Dogs Legion.
Glad to see you're alive. If you're still committed to the cause, DedSec needs you. I'll send you the coordinates to our last safe house. Meet me there.
Fine.
Did I just detect the hint of an Irish accent in young Mr... Well, his name is Cassidy, I suppose. It is an Irish name. Shouldn't be surprising. So, anyway, yeah. London. Watch Dogs Legion. What's wrong with her? Do you need a hand there, love? Oh, no, she's okay. Right. Oh, look at this hipster. What is he wearing? London's been taken over by hipsters and posers. What's going on? Oh, I suppose I should probably press tab to open the map and place a waypoint to my mission location. Restart DedSec. Locate the safe house entrance. So, yeah. Comparisons to Ubisoft's regular open world style games like Ghost Recon, like the Far Cry series, are going to be inevitable. And to a certain degree, that's an entirely fair comparison. It is an open world game. You do have the freedom to go pretty much anywhere and do pretty much anything. Follow the plot if you wish, or not. The choice is yours. But there are definite similarities with other games as well. I'm detecting more than a little Grand Theft Auto, and quite a bit of The Division as well. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm still at the moment just checking out all the architecture. They have done a remarkable job of visualising London, or a near future version of London. I'm not expecting to see anything commercially recognisable. They've had to change the names of the shops, for example. You're not going to see any Starbucks. But everything else is pretty much the London I know, just with a healthy dash of augmented reality, like the holographic dragon in Chinatown here. Full disclosure here, by the way, I'm not a Londoner. I don't know London intimately, but I have been to London enough times that this is entirely convincing. In this respect, I suppose it's a lot like the Division games, which are set in New York and Washington, D.C. Now, as far as the Division 2 is concerned, I've never been to Washington, D.C., but I've been to New York a few times. And Ubisoft's representation of New York within the first Division game was certainly good enough that I felt as if I was in New York in that game. They had all of the relevant landmarks and tourist spots in all of the relevant locations, and the areas between them, while they weren't 100% accurate representations of New York, they were close enough that you felt as if you were there. And they've pretty much managed to do the same thing here with London in Watch Dogs Legion. It's just a London that's covered with even more security and surveillance than the real London is today. Checkpoints every couple of 100 metres, fully automated. It's like the game developers had a paranoid wet dream about the future of modern society. And this is it. And it's probably not too far off the mark, actually. One of the plot points of Watch Dogs Legion is a system that's known as CTOS. It's London's operating system. It's what controls all of the checkpoints, all of the surveillance, all of the camera drones. But the system's only able to achieve blanket coverage throughout the entire metropolitan area of London with the assistance and collusion of the population. And in this respect, it's a bit like the otherwise completely deplorable Terminator Genesis movie. The idea being that cameras, drones, security checkpoints, they're all great, but if you want 100% surveillance and security coverage, you need to get the population to be an active part in the surveillance effort themselves, essentially watching themselves and everybody that they come into contact with. And how on earth Like, oh wow, the driving controls in this are almost as bad
Auto drive now available.
as Ghost Recon Wildlands. Oh, we've got auto drive, fine. But yes, how do you get the people on board with the idea of surveilling themselves and everybody that they come into contact with? And this is where Terminator Genesis had its one good idea. Because if you try to force something onto people, they'll rebel against it, even if it's clearly for their own good. You know, like wearing a face mask so you don't infect anybody with any diseases that you might have. Just as one example. On the other hand, if you were to create something that was as good as a mobile phone, but free and way more convenient, people would be battering down your door in order to use it. And that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, is what the optic technology is. Optic with a K. It basically replaced mobile phones. Think of it as being like Google Glass, except it doesn't suck. It doesn't make you look like a twat when you're wearing it. And it has all the functionality of a mobile phone and a PDA. Plus, because it feeds directly into your optic nerve, it has the added benefit of incorporating augmented reality, different to virtual reality. Think of Pokemon Go. When you're looking at your mobile phone screen and you're seeing Pokemon Go, imagine that being fed directly into your optic nerve. So for example, you might be wandering around the streets of London, something catches your eye or someone catches your eye, and you can instantly, in a window in your field of view, pull up all of their social media. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, everything. You'd instantly be able to pull up all of the publicly available information on anybody that you happen to be looking at any given time, just by thinking about it. You can see how attractive something like this would be in today's social media and information technology obsessed culture. This is not something that you'd have to force onto people. You'd be beating people off with a shitty stick. They'd be that desperate to get it. And of course, once they've got it, they've also got all of the other little programs that you've sneaked on that you don't like to tell people about. Now, depending on how paranoid you are, you could make the case that this is already happening anyway with our mobile phones. But mobile phones aren't on all the time. The battery dies. You don't always carry it with you everywhere that you go. Sometimes it's sitting in the hallway, plugged in and charging up. This optic technology is always on, all the time. And it's everywhere, because everybody has it. It represents the wet fever dream of the security state. Anyway, we've made it to the safe house.
I downloaded a patch to your optics so you can access our security system. It's set up so that I can't just let someone who isn't DedSec in. You'll have to do the manual override.
Secret passages and hidden bases. Oh, I fucking missed this shite.
So, Sabine has just installed a patch on my optic system. I don't remember asking her, I don't remember giving her permission, but she's gone and done it anyway, which via augmented reality is allowing me to actually see the security system embedded here in the safe house. So while I'm using the augmented reality to disable the security and allow me to actually get into the safe house itself, just think about that for a minute. Because if you can hack somebody's optic, which is basically what Sabine just did, without their knowledge, you can control, through augmented reality, everything that they see, hear, smell, touch, and feel. Now here in Watch Dogs Legion, the optic technology is relatively new, and so when you're seeing something in augmented reality, it's obviously not real. When you're looking at something in AR, you know that it's an AR overlay projected over the top of reality. But how long before the technology achieves the kind of fidelity and resolution that you cannot tell the difference between something that's been overlaid on top of reality and something that actually is real? The possibilities are actually kind of scary.
Open sesame.
And in fact, there was an episode of the TV show Black Mirror that explored this in some detail, with members of the military that used augmented reality for entirely practical purposes, tracking and identification of targets, tracking the locations of other members of their squad to prevent friendly fire and allow the squad to coordinate their activities much more efficiently. But at the same time, what was also going on, that the soldiers were not consciously aware of, was that their perceptions of their enemies were being altered to make them appear less than human. Because if you're about the business of ethnic cleansing and you want your soldiers to mercilessly and without hesitation gun down women and children because they belong to an ethnic group that you don't happen to like very much, it can be difficult to persuade your soldiers to do that. In the past, this has been achieved through propaganda and indoctrination, but with augmented reality, you could make your soldiers see whoever you wanted as an enemy combatant or an inhuman monster, and you wouldn't have to persuade them to pull the trigger. This is Bagley. He's a really annoying AI.
And you'll have to explain my untimely demise to Sabine.
Sabine's alive? Well, that's one piece of good news. I'm Bagley, DedSec's definitely not stolen, highly advanced AI assistant, and it seems I've been out of commission for a few months. Anyway,
Right, I'm going to cut an extremely long story short here. The TLDR version is DedSec is now back up and running, but I am so far its only member who isn't dead, in hiding, or under arrest. So if we're going to bring down the system, overthrow the government-funded private security firm that has London in its grip, and expose the truth of what happened with the bombings all those years ago, I'm going to need to recruit some more members. And you can attempt to recruit from the entire population of London. I've just pulled up an AR dossier on this woman here who's a landlord who apparently has access to a G36 assault rifle. I'll bet she doesn't have any problems with tenants not paying their rent. How about this drunk? Nah. Oh. An Albion employee, the security firm. If I was to turn him, I would have uniformed access to all Albion locations in London. Well, I'm going to save him to my pool of potential recruits, because if I can turn this guy, it would obviously be very, very useful. Let's keep looking around. How about this guy, begging on the streets? He can actually beg for money for the organisation. He also has hacking skills, and every time he hacks, he also skims money off the top for the organisation. I'm not entirely sure why he would have this on his Facebook profile. Just go with it. It's a game, okay? But it's not just a simple case of walking up to a random stranger in the street and saying, hey, do you want to be in my gang? I mean, it's slightly more complicated than that. Not everybody's going to be sympathetic to DedSec after all. I mean, the media have done a very convincing job of branding you as a bloodthirsty, murdering terrorist organisation. Oh my god, this woman has access to a grenade launcher! Yeah, right, anyway, so how do you actually go about recruiting somebody? Well, the first thing that you need to do is identify somebody that's actually going to be useful to the organisation, and you can do that simply by pulling up an augmented reality dossier on anybody you happen to be looking at. But then you have to go about converting them to the cause. Some people are going to be more sympathetic than others. Obviously, Albion Security Services employees are going to be pretty unsympathetic. But other people might have all kinds of reasons for deciding to sign up if they're approached correctly. And two of the missions that you're given right upon exiting the safe house at the beginning of the game are designed to exploit this. You're given the location of a bunch of bare-knuckle fighting arenas, which makes sense because if you're going to go tangling with the security forces, people who like to fight illegally for money would probably be quite useful to have on your side. But in order to get them on your side, the first thing that you're going to have to do is beat the living shit out of them. They had a similar arena fighting system in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. You fight your way up through the ranks until you can challenge and defeat the champion. Once you've successfully managed to defeat the champion, you've got the opportunity to recruit any of the people that you've beaten in the arena.
Did you all see that monster on the street? Fucking hell!
I love this fight commentator, by the way. Defeat enough of the underlings and eventually you get to fight the boss. And this particular boss is a dirty, cheating bastard. When he starts losing, he calls for backup, and you have to fight him and all of his mates at the same time. Yep, got him on the ropes. He calls for his mates. And now I have to fight not just Horst, but also all three of his friends, one of whom seems to be Scumbag Steve. Watch Dogs Legion, the only game that allows you the opportunity to lay the smackdown on one of the internet's most hated figures. So it's got that going for it, I suppose. There he is in the corner. Yeah, that's Scumbag Steve all right, letting his mates take the beating while he hangs out in the corner. Oh, and he only comes in when my back's turned, yeah. Even then, he's not brave enough. Look, he's still hiding in the corner. Oh, wait. Is he taking it? No, he's letting his girlfriend do the fighting for him. Oh, Steve. Steve, where did it all go so wrong? Here, have a bunch of fives. Chew on that knuckle sandwich. Actually, his girlfriend's pretty tough. I'm not surprised. Come on, let's put the boss down. Yeah, we still got to take care of Steve and his missus. I think his missus is the bigger threat, so I'm going to put her down first. Oh, Steve, you had your chance and you blew it. Oh, he failed again. Right then, Steve, it's just you and me, son. Can't hide behind your friends anymore. Oh, we got him on the ropes. Wait, no, he's not quite down yet. Oh, yeah, he is now. And that's it. So this gives us the opportunity to recruit, well, any of the bare knuckle fighters that we've just defeated. So this is one way of recruiting some muscle, or at least starting the recruitment process for some muscle. The thing is, if all you're doing is recruiting from bare knuckle fighters, then you're only going to have people who are good at fighting, and you're going to need people who are good at all kinds of other skills. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to start by tapping up the bouncer who works on the door of the bare knuckle fighting arena.
What a pleasant interaction.
She's a shady character, that's for sure. Her network activity shows she's been trying to hack the National Health Service.
Shy. The NHS is barely creaking along as it is. Last thing it needs is some hacker fucking it about.
Do you really think I couldn't undo the damage done by some human hacker? Just connect me to one of the hospital services she targeted, and I'll sort it.
I'm on it.
Now, Bagley, just because she's hacking the National Health Service doesn't automatically mean she's a bad person. She might just be trying to skip the 6-month waiting lines in order to see a specialist to get something done about her atrociously bad situational awareness and motor skills. The poor woman can't seem to walk 10 feet without bumping into things. Anyway, this is the hospital that she's been targeting. So I've got two choices here. I can access the National Health Service database or hack their servers. So I found the loading dock at the rear, which can only be opened from the inside. So I'm sure that's one way of doing it. It isn't how I actually managed to get this complete, however. So I did a quick circuit of the hospital perimeter looking for a point of entrance, and there are plenty of doors, but they all seem to be locked. I'm not sure why. You wouldn't have thought it would be this difficult to get into a hospital. It doesn't appear to have an accident and emergency department, and none of the doors work. Aside from the loading dock at the rear, but that door only opens from the inside, so that's almost certainly going to be one way in if I can figure out how. Would probably involve hacking some systems. But possibly there's more than one way to get this job done. There are a couple of ambulances parked outside, and there are some paramedics attending I'm not sure, a junkie? He's definitely a hipster. I don't know what's wrong with him. Maybe he discovered some gluten in his vegan Frappuccino Moccolino, I don't know. I'm sure he'll be fine. Maybe there was something I could have done with the paramedics or the ambulance. I don't know. Because the solution that I settled upon, and there were no hints or tips, there were no suggestions, no tutorials, nothing. I just pinged the area with my optic and I thought, oh, what's this? Call cargo drone. I'd never actually noticed these platforms before because they're above eye level. They're drone delivery platforms. Obviously Amazon's branched out in the near future. And you can hack these drones. Now, I'm not entirely sure that I want to hijack a CTOS drone, but I'll hijack a cargo drone. Right, and I have control of the cargo drone. So how does this work? Control down, space up. So I'll bring it down to street level. That should do. It's alright, folks. Nothing to see here. Release control of the drone. climb on board, take control of the drone once again. Well, that should get me into the hospital. I cannot begin to tell you how inordinately pleased with myself I was that I managed to figure this out. Because there were no hints, no tips, no tutorial. Nothing prompted me to do this. I just saw something, thought, what's that? Investigated and realised I could use it to get to the network server hub. And I love it when games do this, when they don't hold you by the hand, but they just leave clues scattered around and leave it for you to figure out how to best accomplish something. I'm sure there are multiple other ways of achieving the same result, but this is how I did it. Right, we're in.
Done.
What have we got, Bagley?
Nothing to fix, actually. She's been patching holes in their security, not opening them. Seems she's not so much a cyber criminal as she is renegade tech support.
I'm listening.
She's been particularly focused on exploits around the organ transfer list. Anyone who got their hands on these exploits would have a lot of control over that waiting list.
If that's not a job for DedSec, I don't know what is. Bagley, get me a face-to-face.
Right, now we've got to meet with Abigail. Turns out she's actually one of the good guys, which hopefully will mean that she's sympathetic to joining DedSec, although I suspect we're going to have to scratch her back first. But first things first, a face-to-face. And our trusty AI, Bagley, has arranged a meet with Miss Abigail here outside the hotel at St. Pancras.
Why, a big-time, world-famous DedSec right in front of me? Lot of mercy.
Saw your handiwork at the hospital. You're halfway to pretty fucking good.
You can compliment me when I'm able to stop Clan Kelly. They twanged hundreds of organs before I could close up that exploit.
Well, that's concerning.
If I knew how to take back that batch they stole, I swear I would. Just can't take down all those gangsters on my own.
Okay, we'll handle it.
Thanks. Hey, but get out now, and I promise to help you back. You hear?
So the Kelly gang have an ambulance full of bootleg organs parked in this housing complex. Note the minimap in the bottom left corner. Note the yellow icon indicating the location of the ambulance, and note that it's in an area that's shaded in red. I have to admit, I passed across a couple of red shaded areas in the game before, never actually went into them, and wondered what they were. Anybody inside a red area is not going to be pleased to see you. I should have spent less time checking out this guy's abilities and more time taking him down, because the second he turns around and sees me, or I just run past him, he's going to attack. Yes, this is like when you're inside an enemy area in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Everybody is hostile once you're within that perimeter. So I need to put this guy down quick before he calls for reinforcements. Quicker than that. There we go. And finish him. Now, grab the ambulance and get out of here. Nice and simple, yeah? Well, not quite. Because vehicular access to this particular housing block is controlled via a locked gate, and in order to unlock the gate I'm going to have to get out and hack it, and when I get out and hack it I can get shot at by all of the reinforcements that have turned up, because I didn't realise what a red shaded area of the map was, and I just walked in bold as brass instead of sneaking up and taking everybody down quietly. So I was kind of stuck here, because every time I tried to approach the gate access to hack it, somebody would pop up and empty a submachine gun in my general direction. Then one of the SMG armed reinforcements went to the trouble of opening the gate for me, which I thought was jolly nice of him. Right, thanks very much. I'm getting out of here. This is about as far as I've gotten in Watch Dogs Legion. I was not expecting to enjoy this as much as I was. Like I said, I've never played any of the Watch Dogs games before. There was something about the way they were marketed that just told me I wasn't the target audience, and yet I am having a lot of fun playing Watch Dogs Legion, much more so than I was expecting. And I think that's mostly down to the way that, well, there are all kinds of games out there that promise you the freedom to play them the way you want to. And they usually come pretty close, but none of them come as close as Watch Dogs Legion has. This game has genuinely surprised me. It's far from perfect, of course. I mean, the pathfinding of some of the non-player characters is shockingly bad. Constantly getting stuck in doorways and on objects in the street. And I'm not entirely sure why the speed limit in central London appears to be 15 or 20 miles per hour. but it certainly, at least initially, does seem to have the makings of a very, very good game. One that I wasn't expecting to enjoy as much as I am. I can see myself sinking many, many hours into this game, at least until Assassin's Creed Valhalla and Cyberpunk 2077 come out. I have to say, it was very, very brave of Ubisoft to release this game as close as it was to the release of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, but, well, they seem to be very confident that this game is entirely capable of standing on its own two legs, and I think that confidence is not misplaced. Anyway, that's it for today. I may be doing more videos on this game in future, but I hope you've enjoyed this one, and as always, take care, stay safe, and I'll catch you next time.